We've all seen a bee on a flower, right? But what happens after it buzzes off? Well, that's where the real story kicks in. Today, we're pulling back the petals on the secret life of a flower, a high-stakes journey that starts with a single grain of pollen and ends with the seeds and fruits that literally shape our world.
You'd think any old pollen would do, right? Nope. Flowers are incredibly picky. Before anything else can happen, the flower and the pollen have to have this really complex conversation, a kind of chemical negotiation that decides the future of the entire plant. So, how does a flower choose its perfect partner?
All right, so here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with that initial chemical handshake, then witness a truly bizarre double fertilization. After that, we'll unpack the ultimate survival package, the seed, see how a flower transforms into a fruit, and finally, explore how we've learned to hack this entire system. Okay, let's get into it. Our story begins the moment a pollen grain lands on the pistil. That's the flower's female part, right there in the middle. And instantly, the pistil has a huge decision to make. Is this pollen a compatible partner, or is it an unwanted guest? This is not a passive event. It's more like a really intense, high-stakes interview. The pistil is basically running a background check on the pollen, reading its molecular signature to ask two critical questions. Are you the right species? And just as importantly, are you a good genetic match? And if the pollen checks out, boom, it gets the green light. A tiny tube starts to grow, beginning this incredible journey down through the pistil, heading straight for the ovary. But if it doesn't pass the vibe check, the pistil just slams the door shut. It either stops the pollen from sprouting at all, or it stops that growing tube dead in its tracks. Okay, so once a compatible pollen tube makes it all the way to the ovary, this is where the real show begins. What happens next is, well, it's pretty wild. It's a biological event that's totally unique to flowering plants. See, it's not just one fertilization. We're talking about two separate fusions happening almost at the same time. This whole process is called double fertilization, and honestly, it's the evolutionary secret weapon that allowed flowering plants to take over the planet. So you're probably asking, why two fusions? Well, that pollen tube isn't just a tunnel. Think of it more like a delivery vehicle carrying two very important passengers, two male gametes or sperm cells, and each one has its own separate, crucial job to do. And here's the breakdown. The first sperm fuses with the egg cell. We call that syngamy, and it creates the zygote, the future plant embryo. But here's the brilliant part. The second sperm fuses with two other cells to create something called the endosperm. It's an absolutely genius strategy, you know? The plant makes the baby and its packed lunch at the exact same time. No wasted energy. All right, so fertilization is done. Now the plant switches gears. Its entire mission becomes about building the perfect little survival pod for its offspring. A self-contained, protected package that has everything it needs. The embryo and its food supply, all packed neatly into the seed. You want a perfect example of how this works? Look no further than a coconut. That water you can drink from a young coconut, that's literally the first stage of the endosperm. It's a nutrient-rich soup for the embryo to grow in. And the white, fleshy part we eat, that's the next stage. It's just so clever. The plant makes the food first to make absolutely sure its baby has a meal ready and waiting. But, not all seeds pack their lunchbox the same way. For some plants, like peas and peanuts, the embryo is a bit of a greedy kid. It gobbles up its entire food supply before the seed is even mature. That's why they split in half so nicely. But for others, like corn and wheat, that starchy endosperm hangs around for the long haul. And that leftover food is exactly what we find so valuable. So as the seed gets ready to go out into the world, it prepares for a long, long wait. It starts to dehydrate, getting rid of most of its water. Its whole metabolism grinds almost to a halt, entering this state of suspended animation called dormancy. This is the seed's ultimate survival trick. It lets it literally pause time until conditions are just right. And just how long can they wait? Well, some for an absolutely mind-boggling amount of time. Get this, the current record holder is an Arctic lupine seed, found frozen solid in the tundra. Scientists estimated it was about 10,000 years old. They thawed it out, planted it, and it actually grew into a flowering plant. I mean, how incredible is that? So let's pull back for a second. While all this tiny microscopic drama is happening to create the seed, the flower's ovary isn't just sitting around. It's undergoing its own spectacular transformation into what we call the fruit. But hold on, what even is a fruit, botanically speaking? Well, a true fruit, like a mango, grows only from the flower's ovary. But sometimes other parts of the flower get in on the action, and we call those false fruits. The apple is the classic example here. That juicy part you love to eat, that's not the ovary. It's actually the swollen base of the flower that grew up and around it. So you're eating more than you think. And then you've got nature's own little life hack. Fruits that develop with no fertilization at all. These are parthenocarpic. And since there's no fertilization, there are no seeds. They're naturally seedless. The banana is a famous example. Of course, we figured out how to copy this, using growth hormones to give us the seedless grapes and watermelons we see in the store.
So naturally, once humans figured out this whole incredible process, from pollination all the way to fruit, we had a thought. Hey, maybe we can hack this. And that realization is the very bedrock of all of modern agriculture and crop breeding.
This is how plant breeders do it. They use this really meticulous 4-step process called artificial hybridization to basically play matchmaker. They pick 2 parent plants with traits they like, carefully remove the male parts from one to make sure it doesn't pollinate itself, and then hand-pollinate it with pollen from the other parent. It's all about creating those commercially superior crop varieties.
But you know what's funny? We weren't the first ones to figure out a hack for this system. Nature totally beat us to the punch. Some plants have this wild ability called apomixis. They produce seeds without any fertilization. Just think about that. It means every single seed is a perfect genetic clone of the mother plant.
So why is this a huge deal? Well, the problem with those amazing hybrid crops is that their seeds are a one-hit wonder. The next generation loses those special traits. That forces farmers to buy brand new, expensive seeds every single year. But what if you could make those hybrids apomictic? They'd produce clone seeds. This is the holy grail for plant breeders. It would let farmers reuse their seeds year after year, saving them a fortune in transforming agriculture.
And that leaves us with one final awe-inspiring thought. Picture a tiny seed from a giant fig tree. How can that minuscule package possibly hold the blueprint for such a massive organism? It's a powerful reminder of the incredible potential locked inside these tiny survival capsules, a world-changing journey that all starts with a single, invisible grain of pollen.